You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
You know, ingenuity and creativity spurs continuous improvements within the options industry. And our next panel will share lessons learned from years of experience leading innovative change initiatives, spanning product development, technology advancements, and operational efficiencies. Now, before we get into the panel, we have a quick video from our session sponsor, Dev Experts, followed by a few remarks from the Senior Vice President Americas and Board Advisor for Dev Experts, Antonio Goncalves.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the most exciting panel of today. New Frontiers, Innovation Changing the Industry. Innovation. Many have tried, most have failed, and those who succeeded will be here in the panel with us in a few moments. Before I announce them, I wanted to let you know of a few very exciting innovations that Dev Experts are launching soon. Fractional shares OMS, the automation of the OTC voice FX option space with the first true marketplace, automated marketplace for FX options. A DeFi data infrastructure and analytics with dissemination of 5 oracles. An artificial intelligence-based unusual option service, which includes traditional and crypto options. And finally, very exciting hybrid brokerage trading platform and data services that adds crypto assets to the classic options functionality. With us today, we're going to have some giants of the industry, giants of innovation, starting with Mr. Paul Jiganti, who his very name means giant in Italian. Mr. Tom Gallagher, the chairman and CEO of Miami International Holdings, MIAX, who, coming out of nowhere, achieved a tremendous success all through innovation in the past 5 years. Jeanine Hightower-Sellitto, the chief executive officer of Atomyze, and Steve Quirk, who has a tremendous background and tradition of innovation in the industry and now moved to a very special place as chief brokerage officer at Robinhood. Ladies and gentlemen, please a round of applause of the giants of innovation in our industry. Giant. Very tall, giant.
That was quite an introduction. I feel like we should just drop the mic and leave.
They might be happy with that. They can get to the pool quicker.
And I heard there's a bar out there. Julie had tapped me to moderate this panel. I said, can I pick who's on there? It took me about 2 seconds to decide the 3 people that every time I get in the room with them, I'm way more excited than I was walking in. Then they completely are very optimistic, slightly more than our keynote today, I have to say. And you really walk out knowing that everything's going to be just fine. But what I really realize is, after working with Steve, being on Tom's board, being around Jeanine for the last 20 years, that these people are truly special. And it's how they approach their problem solving. And so what I'm hoping to do in the next 45 minutes is really dig down deep and find what makes their approach different than many of us just regular options traders. So, we're going to go down the line. Everyone's going to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the heart of it.
All right, I guess I'm first in line. Steve Quirk. I think you wanted us to talk about how we got to this point, right?
Sure.
Okay. So I've always been in the markets, at least since I've been an adult. Some of you are questioning the whole adult thing, but so I've always been in the markets, starting at the CME, moving to the CBOE, on the trading floor for, I don't even know, 15, maybe a couple more years than that, and then moving upstairs on the electronic market making side, working for a variety of firms, had my own firm for a while, and then working for some firms in Europe, which was really, it was really beneficial because I actually get, a lot of the exchanges went electronic years before it happened here in the U.S. So I was playing around with the software that people were using, learning how to configure that, and really understanding what people behind the screen need. And so when I made the shift to retail, we kind of had a leg up because we understood both what retail clients who were now market makers were looking for and how to build for them. And so, the advent of more technology coming at when I was on the trading floor, I think I was paying 10 to 15 grand a month for my technology, which is now free and much better for retail clients on their phone. And obviously the cost of the transaction is nothing now. And the information is so much better that it's made it really a great level playing field for retail. And we've seen a massive boom as a result of it. And I just relish being able to be in the space and help people, with their investing and trading.
Tom?
Hi, I'm Tom Gallagher. I'm the chairman and CEO of the MIAX Exchange Group. And I think what got me here, or got MIAX here, was having a vision for what the MIAX Exchange Group could become, and actually being able to sell that vision to investors from 30 countries, to prospective employees, and to regulators. So sell them on a vision that I believed in, that I thought we could execute on, and I could get people to follow me with that vision. And what also got me here was always being in a position when you're starting something this ambitious to be financeable at every point in the way, and not to do things that make you unable to get financing, because there's going to be a lot of deep valleys and very few highs in the beginning. And the last thing I think that got me here and got us here was hiring the right kind of people, including many of them that are in this room today, and letting them execute their vision as well as my vision, and getting the hell out of the way, Paul, of people that really know the industry. And if I learned one thing from my father in terms of starting any business, is that it starts with the people. It starts with the people that you can attract. And if you forget for a moment that the most important asset, goes up and down the elevator shaft, if you forget that, you'll never be successful. So it was having a vision, being able to sell the vision, remaining financeable, and getting the right people around you. And lastly, I think, and really importantly, is being optimistic. Being optimistic. I've never led people out of fear. You can certainly, they're both infectious, but you can get a hell of a lot more done if you walk into the office with a sense of optimism that we can do something, we can break through in this industry, and not lead out of fear, but lead out of optimism. And it's not necessarily what I hand out to people in the morning, it's what I give off and what in turn they give off. So those are some basics, Paul, as to what got me here and our company here.
Fantastic. And
Sure.
Jeanine?
Thanks, Paul. So many of you here know me from my time at the International Securities Exchange. It's where I know Paul for many, many years, and the rest of the people on the panel today. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I left the options business in 2017 after a short stint at NASDAQ after they acquired ISE. and moved into the cryptocurrency space. I went to go work for a crypto exchange called Gemini for 2 years, running their exchange business, building out the commercial side of a cold storage custody business. And then in 2020, I started at a company called Atomyze, where I'm the CEO. We are tokenizing commodities and building a marketplace for spot commodity transactions. It's a blockchain company. I'm sure you've heard of the blockchain. But essentially it's not a crypto company. We are actually assigning digital title to real-world physical assets and then making them tradable on our platform. But to answer Paul's question, I got started in my business career standing thigh-deep in mud in a pair of waders at a beaver dam in 1995. And I was a biology major in college, thinking I'm going to go to med school. Wouldn't this be great? Because everyone has a plan when they go to college, and the plans we often think we're going to follow don't necessarily work out. And after a quick stint volunteering at the hospital, realized I don't really like sick people or medicine or being around sick people or wanting anything to do with them, and I hope they get better, but it's not for me. So here I am standing at this beaver dam, thinking, is this what my career is going to be? I'm in an animal behavior class looking at my peers, and it's all wonderful, but this wasn't really what I was envisioning for my career. And I think, like most of us, we plan certain things in our lives, and some things go unplanned. I've had a lot of serendipity in my career, and one of the things that happened in the mid-'90s is Glass-Steagall got repealed. A lot of banks were looking for talented people. There was no offshoring junior-level jobs at the time. There was no remote work. So they needed armies of young people that knew how to run Excel spreadsheets. So I joined an investment bank and just happened, sometimes I wonder back, did it just happen or did I plan it this way? Or what was it that attracted me? But I ended up doing my rotations and joining the internet group, which at the time was under the Technology and Communications Group, and did investment banking for dot-com companies for a few years. And we all know how that ended. So moved to New York. I went to go work for a small financial services company, and then about a year into that, ISE had recruited me to come join ISE. It was 2004. It was still early at the ISE. Had a tremendous career there. Was there for 14 years. Loved every minute of it. Loved this business. I always tell people now in my new business, it's the people I miss the most about the options business more than anything. But it's a great business. But unfortunately, again, change happens in some ways you can't predict. And with the NASDAQ acquisition of ISE, I had a pretty long non-compete and was forced to change again. And I really gave myself a chance to say, what is it I want to do with my life? Do I want to work for a bank? Done that. Where do I see myself? And it's sort of at the forefront of innovation is where I find comfort. I'm not a technologist, but I'm really comfortable with things I don't know and don't understand, and I'm not afraid to dive in. Crypto was an interesting aspect because there was a lot of need for people with financial background that could help those markets mature. So I joined an organization where I was the oldest person at the company of like 250 people. I was the only person with any type of financial background and really made a real impact in terms of that business. And that was a jumping point for the new blockchain company that's also relying on a lot of market fundamentals from previous experience, but really looking at that market in a new way. I'm not in a commodities background, but if you spend any time in those markets, you'll see how antiquated they are. I mean, we think back to the late 1990s and options, and we thought that was antiquated, but the metals markets, the commodities markets are even more so. So when I think about joining Atomyze and what we're doing here, it's really a tremendous opportunity to modernize marketplaces using new technology to bring efficiency. And we think about those hallmarks, that's really a way to advent the growth of the whole industry, as we did at ISE and as we've seen in the last 20 years in the options markets. So a little bit of how I got here.
So what I think is funny that none of you mentioned that everybody is probably thinking whenever they change, like you've all changed seats, careers, complete paths at times. Tom was a lawyer. Steve was a market maker on the floor, and ends up completely in the other spot. Jeanine's been in three or four completely different spots. You keep missing out on the risk. Like all of us gets frozen in spots, in your career, and none of you mentioned risk, and knowing you all so well, I know that doesn't really enter into your equation. Or is it something you run towards? Like Steve, do you look at these risks, like the risk of career jumping, all these times? If you've got children at home at the point, and was it worrisome?
Well, I just realized something. Jeanine and I are both the oldest people at our company.
I am too.
Not only that, I'm older than every client of Robinhood, too. So What I'm trying to pull is a Benjamin Button here. Because I tell people this story about how people are like, how'd you get to Robinhood? You came from TD Ameritrade? They're over there, so I can pick on them. Where the average age is about 55 of the clients. And I moved to some place where the average age is 31. And I tell the story of how I got there. I harp on my 20-some-year-old girls, who now have jobs, about the importance of starting your investing journey early. And after a lot of badgering, they finally took me up on it and opened Robinhood accounts. I'm like, hey, I work for fucking TD Ameritrade. What are you doing? Like, okay, all right, I'll still help you. Yeah, so I like to say I followed my kids over there. But to answer your question, I think there's a risk in not taking a risk. The risk is, and Jeanine pointed it out, when you're uncomfortable, you're learning. Mm-hmm. You're learning, and so whether it's new customer segment, new technology, new area of focus, it's really cool to go learn. I think one of the most energizing things I was privileged enough to do at TD Ameritrade was to open entities in Singapore, Hong Kong, and China. I loved it. Going and learning a whole new culture. They have very different needs, very different investing styles, the way that you approach the business, all the things that you assume will be successful. Many of them aren't. It's just fascinating. It's really, really fun, and it keeps you young.
Tom, I mean, you.
I think if you don't take risks, you'll never reach your full potential. And I think you have to think about risk, but you have to put it in a manageable part of your brain. And risks of failure, I think every entrepreneur has that risk and that fear. But I think if you're honest with your investors, if you're honest with your employees, and you're trying to do something innovative and groundbreaking and setting a new bar like we did in areas like risk protections. So the risk of failure, to me, isn't that bad if you're doing the best thing for your investors and the marketplace. If people don't accept it, I looked at our team, I said it wasn't for want of putting a sincere, honest effort in. And if we fail, it wasn't meant to be. So I put it in a very small box. And I try to avoid thinking about it, except when necessary.
But, I mean, you went home. You did a successful law career. You went home, and you said to your wife, oh, by the way?
Yeah. By the way, we're going to do this. Well, my children were just starting college. I'm 50 years old then, and I came home saying we're going to start a stock exchange in Miami, Florida, and I'm going to call some guys in the Middle East, and the market conditions in 2008 couldn't have been worse. We got only the first $2.5 million, June the 4th, 2008, and we all knew what happened in August and September of 2008. And we embarked on this journey. My wife said to me, you sure you want to do this? You've got some major league accounts in the legal profession. I said, I think there's a need here, and I'm going to diligence it like I would for another investor. I'm going to diligence it for myself. And I remember one day when I signed a significant guarantee. It's probably north of $5 million, and I was on my way to the Middle East, and we needed to get some financing. And I said, by the way, would you mind signing this? She says, what the hell is this? I said, it's a big figure guarantee for some equipment we need to get to the next level. And she looked at me and she said, you sure this is the right thing to do? I said, yeah. So I did it, went on my way to the Middle East, raised some capital, and about 4 years ago, I came in like Jackie Gleason, for those of you that are old enough, and I said, Sue, here's the release on that major $5 million plus guarantee, and it had some other things attached to it that affect your real estate. And she said, oh, put it over there, and when I get a chance, I'll put it where we keep our valuables. So thought nothing of it. And I said, really? That's how you're looking at this major risk I took? So about 3 weeks later, she bought me probably $100 pen and apologized for not realizing what it meant to me to be able to have taken that risk and to basically, be done with it. So it's just a little vignette of some of the risk, but you need the support of people like your family and the people that are sitting out here in this audience. Guys like Doug Schaefer, I don't know, Doug, is Doug here? Guys like Doug and others, and Shelley and Smolin and a bunch of them, they left great careers at the top of their game. And, that motivated me, that if these guys could share that vision, I must be on to something, Mm-hmm. So.
Now, Jeanine, you've done it.
Yeah, I've done it a couple times, and I think there's two things, right? That you have to evaluate the risk, of course, and believe that the opportunity is there. That's the biggest thing. What are you chasing, and is there a real opportunity to make change, to make a real impact in the business you're trying to build? And then, secondly, you have to be very honest with yourself. Are you the right person to get that job done? And it's not always, are you going to work hard enough and are you going to be smart enough, but it's a lot of the things. Can you hire the right people? You're going to have the right financing, but can you personally bring it together? And I think when we collectively talk about innovation and entrepreneurship, it is a lot more than just being smart enough to get the job done. You have to really bring your personality, your A game, the enthusiasm. Tom talked about it earlier, that your team is relying on you to give them the motivation to make it through some challenging times, and to bring the right game face to your day to day. And so can you do that and sustain that, importantly, day after day with all the different constituents you're going to be talking to? Because if you're going to get tired of it, or you don't think you can sustain it for the long run, you're not going to make it over the hills, and you're certainly not going to make it through the valleys.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so, to get you there from when you're, starting your career, did you have a mentor? Did you have someone that you looked up to, and do you still have a relationship with that person?
Yeah, I mean, early on, not so much in banking because it's a very different climate in terms of corporate work. But I spent 14 years at the ISC. I worked for Gary Katz and Boris Lejewski for the entire time I was there, except for the very end. And yes, I still talk to them quite a lot. Gary very much on the corporate side, the management side, building a great team, how you communicate with investors, how you communicate with your staff. In terms of a professional mentor, for sure. Boris and I have a very special relationship. He taught me a lot. I think I taught him a lot too, in a lot of ways. But one of the things that I valued most about our relationship is our ability to spar and argue, and our ability to really, push each other to get the best results for what we were trying to achieve, and always do it in a way that we maintained a really solid friendship. And once we came to a conclusion, be able to support each other's ideas, even if they weren't our own or what we were advocating for. And when I'm building my own team, it's one of the things I look for most in my management team is the ability for them not just to take direction and know what they need to do to get the job done, but also to push back on me. As a standalone, you're never going to run a company and be successful if it's just your idea that's rolling down to the team. You need people that are going to stand up to you, are going to challenge you, are going to challenge your ideas and the path that you see going forward, and be able to do that with the right touch and the right finesse so that you can maintain that relationship with them. Because as you go through tough times, you have to have a good relationship with the people you're working with, but you can't you can't have a bunch of people agreeing with you. And so from that perspective, Boris and I have had a very good relationship and continue to this day. We still talk quite a lot. So,
Tom, you mentioned your dad briefly in that. Is that...
My dad was a really profound example for me. He was an entrepreneur. And so I watched him. I had a chance to work for him when I was in high school or in college. And just the way he treated the people that worked for him had a profound effect on me. And also, that optimism that you need to show. In the beginning of MIAX, my CFO would be waiting for me on Monday mornings, Paul. And he would remind me what happens on Fridays when ADP pulls your payroll. And he would always be, in the beginning, this is way before we launched, but he'd remind me what day it was. And I'd say, Paul, today is Monday. Friday's the payroll. We got 5 days to deal with that. You do your job. You deal with what the hell you got to deal with. I'll worry about the payroll. And stop bothering me about that because we'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. We got 5 days. What is he worried about? So that optimism. Now, was I nervous about it? Hell yeah. But I don't want him to be worrying about something. So my dad was a mentor, mainly I saw the way he led people and his 3 kind of words, and I've seen it in other businesses, manage with 3 things, 3 simple words: constant, gentle pressure on people that you are leading. You can't do one and be successful. You have to do all three. It's got to be that constant reminder. It doesn't have to be a bullying approach to get people to see what you need to do, but it has to be pressure of some sort. They have to feel that there's an accountability. So it's very simple. It's constant, gentle, and it's pressure. And you have to apply that all the time if you're trying to do things like we're trying to do and break into being the 15th largest derivatives exchange group, and we didn't exist 10 years ago. So that's, but it's my dad. It goes back to my father, and also examples from people that I've worked with. You pick something up every day.
Well, Steve, I know, the constant pressure. I don't know if it was ever gentle that you got from Tom Sosnoff, but I don't know if you necessarily.
I'll never forget the day when TD Ameritrade bought Thinkorswim and they came into town and sat down with Tom. That was just a really, really stark contrast of different styles. So Joe's laughing over there, Kinahan, because he was part of that. We became very good at disseminating messages that were probably a little too direct, and trying to find ways and avenues to make things possible. But, I always believe that in this business and in life, I've never burnt a bridge, and I never will burn a bridge, because I think there's remarkable people in this space, and they're great people to begin with, but they're also super talented, so I always like to keep those connections. So I've had quite a few people that I still keep in touch with, both of the CEOs that you worked with, Paul, as well, at TD Ameritrade, and of course Tom Sosnoff, I keep in touch with him. And a lot of the people from the trading world, I still keep in touch with. And I think you learn things from those people, in that they're very useful in whatever part of the journey you're on. So I like to think that keeping those relationships is really important. I will tell you one thing. I have noticed that as the industry sort of evolves, I think there's less of a understanding of the importance of relationships. As we become more and more advanced from a technology standpoint, I think sometimes there's a little bit more of a separation that I'm comfortable with, but then again, maybe I'm just a little bit old school. I still think relationships are extremely important.
So, as a mentor yourself, how do you push that on to the people that work with you and for you?
Well, first of all, I always consider my job as, if there's a vision, I want to impart the vision, but I'm not telling people how to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. That's their job. And I think I have a pretty good eye for finding really talented people within organizations and the industry, and just getting the runway cleared for them so that they can do the amazing things that make, whatever we're trying to accomplish possible. But the one thing that I would say I probably learned in my career, and again, Joe Kinahan's going to laugh over there because he knows, is I struggle a little bit with delegation. You know what I mean? I like to keep my fingers in things, probably more so than a lot of people are comfortable with me keeping my fingers in things. So that was kind of a struggle, because you think you can do things maybe a little better or whatever the rationale is. And so that was an important lesson. The other lesson is, man, it doesn't matter how old or experienced somebody is. If you just give them an opportunity, they're going to surprise the hell out of you. And they're going to do remarkable things. And it's so, so cool to see. Really fulfilling.
So, Tom, you have a big staff now. That mentoring yourself to bring them up. And is there for all of you guys, is there a wage, an age barrier? Do you see a significant change between, the sub 50-year-olds, put millennial or whatever on each one of the groups? Is it a different management style for them?
I don't think so. I think as the world gets more involved, as you said, in technology, I think the basic principles, whether you're talking to a 22-year-old or a 50-year-old, they want to feel that they're valued. They want to feel that they're making a contribution. They want you to hear what they have to say. They want to feel that there's gratitude from the chairman of the board or the CEO for milestones that are accomplished. I don't care if you're the 22-year-old in the place or someone that was able to get some really amazing equity exchange built, and they've been at it for 25 years. So I think it's basically some real basic values, respecting what they're bringing to the business and treating people fairly. I think that when you're in business, the fiduciary duty is supposedly always to the shareholder, to the shareholder, to the shareholder. I look at the 5 kind of constituents that we have a fiduciary duty, and I think the employees are on an equal with the shareholders, because if you don't have satisfied employees that want to work for you and are willing to tell you the bad news as much as the good news, so the shareholders are obviously key, but the employees. And so I don't care if you're 23 or 63, if you really treat those people as one of the important constituent groups, up there with the members, up there with the strategic members, up there with the regulators, the general public that trade in our markets. So I don't think it changes with age. They have some different things. They like to have, they like to be able to get some time to be at that ball game. They like to get to the gym. There's things that maybe my generation didn't feel comfortable asking the boss. But, man, is that people come in and they're at some child's event. Boy, is that motivating when they can share that. And now I'm really glad to have people coming back to the office, because there's no way you can mentor people, especially we've hired 50 or 60 people in the last 2 years, maybe 80. It's hard to mentor them by Zoom. It's hard. You got to get in front of them, People sell people.
Yeah.
So that's my...
Jeanine, you've got to have people chasing you down to mentor them.
Yeah, it's interesting. At Gemini, we had a lot of younger people in the company. The company I'm at now, I have a lot of experienced people, so there's actually, we're all closer in age at Atomyze than we were at Gemini. But it's different. I think there is sort of a need for younger people who are sort of looking for paths in business, and their business is changing. When we sit up on this panel, we're in the second half of our careers, and maybe one more towards the middle, but we're all at a point where we've seen a lot happen. We've seen a lot of technology change over the last 20, 25 years, and we expect that to go forward in the future. But the younger generation is really expecting a lot of change. When we retire, there will be a huge change coming. Obviously, I'm in the blockchain space, so a lot of that will permeate through all businesses over time, the same way the internet permeated through all businesses over time. And they're really on the cusp of trying to find out something new. I think, maybe not so much in the mentorship question, because I think everybody wants, especially at a small company, to know the leader and what we're doing, and they want the face time, and you have to be willing to give that. I mean, it's really, I do small group meetings with everybody on the team just so when we're in the office together, they all know I know them and I care about them. And most importantly, they know that I know what they're doing is probably the most important thing to them at a small company. So I do try to make specific effort to not just say, thanks, good work, but really say, thanks for doing this. This was great because of this reason. And that goes a really long way in terms of, I think, committing them to our purpose. When it's at Gemini, is a little bit of a different company, retail-facing company, but a lot of the staff there, especially in the younger generation, was very focused on the mission of the company and the greater good that the company was providing. And I think that's a little bit different from the older generation, who is focused on their business. What are they going to get out of it? What returns are the shareholders getting? But within the millennial group, there definitely is a push towards what is the purpose of the work and how is that trading off in terms of what they're doing as an objective. So it was a little bit interesting to have had that experience.
Yeah, so answering that's got, I mean, I'm sure we all feel it in our hearts, but to me, verbalizing it would be very difficult. How this should make you feel good. It takes you back. I mean, in our generation, that was never a question. So I appreciate that. Now, looking back, so now we kind of opened it up into looking in the second half of your careers. Was there a moment that if you had to rewind the clock to say, I should have gone left instead of right? And since all of you have taken so much risk throughout your careers, I'm sure there are other avenues that could have been taken that may have been interesting. Jeanine, did you see something along the last 23 years? I guess.
It's interesting because any step in your career, you can look back and say, should I have taken that job opportunity? Should we have focused on a different aspect? Should our go-to-market strategy have been different in a particular respect? But every path leads to a new path. So it's really hard to look back and say, would have done something differently. With 20/20 hindsight, I'm sure I would make a lot of different choices. Probably every day I would make different choices if I could really look back on it. But I think you only get to the path where you're at by following a course that you think is right at the time. So I don't really have any regrets. I mean, I think there's things that I might have seized the opportunity stronger, been more forceful. But I think that's a learning experience that we all go through. If we all had the foresight in our 20s and our 30s to know what we know now, we know we might have advocated for ourselves earlier or more strongly or pushed harder on something. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we all go through those experiences, and that brings us to where we are now. So we don't really have any regrets.
That's solid. Tom?
I would have been, if I could re-roll the tape, I'd probably have been more aggressive trying to buy other exchanges that came up over the last 10 years. I would have been more aggressive going after Chicago, the National Exchange. I would have been more aggressive in terms of the value of these licenses are exploding. And the other thing is I probably would have stuck my chest out more if I had to redo it, because having been a corporate securities lawyer, cleaning up a lot of messes from press releases where guys and ladies said what they were going to do, but they forgot to mention there was a contingency, I was too conservative, I think, in sticking our chest out and telling the industry and the marketplace what we had built, what we had done in technology with the team that we had. I didn't stick our chest out because I wanted to let the business speak for itself. But if I had to redo it again, I would have been more aggressive. I've never been on CNBC. I've never done an interview with some of these media outlets, because I just also thought that maybe if you're quietly garnering market share. I represented a major airline when they were a startup, and man, the minute they got to 5%, everybody was at them. So I said to myself, my strategy is going to be to quietly grow 3% market share, 5, 10, 15, and diversify. But I should have stuck my chest out a little bit more. If you're asking me a genuine, if I could roll the tape, be more aggressive in acquisitions and be more aggressive in forums like this.
Steve?
In terms of like overall jobs, I tell my kids this all the time. Even your worst job is a good job because it teaches you something. So when I was a kid, one of 5 boys, grew up in rural Wisconsin. We all cut grass. I love that job. Awesome job. Favorite smell in the world, fresh cut grass. We'd take that money, bike right down to the candy store, get tons of candy. Awesome job. Ditch digger, sewer rotter, construction, bartender, bouncer. They're all not great jobs, but you know what? They teach you what you do and don't want to do, and they teach you how to deal with people. I had every one of my kids work in a service organization because they learn how to interact with people, respect people, and that's super important, no matter what field you go into. With regards to if I rolled the tape back, what would I do differently? I just would have taken more risk in general throughout my entire career. I don't know that I'm not risk averse, but I'm also probably not proactively taking as much risk, especially when you're young. Because then you can recoup and recover. If you do make a bad move. I also tell my kids all the time, don't be the flat squirrel. Like, pick one side of the road or the other, because you can always go back, right? Do not be sitting in the middle of the road, unable to make a decision. Like, that drives me crazy. Yep. Make a decision one way or another. If you ever go out to eat, my wife laughs. If you ever go out to eat with a trader, like they get the menu and they're like, I'll have this, here. And they're like, I think I might have them. Like, oh, God, you're killing me.
My wife. My wife.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the headline of the panel, the flat squirrel. We have just 5 minutes left, so I figured give anybody a chance to ask questions if they would like.
Are there people that can't ask questions?
Jimmy Hyde can't ask a question.
He's the first one.
What?
The industry?
Yeah, it's a great question because when ISE was getting started, and my first job at ISE was going around with disks and putting them in people's computers, installing the software on people's computers, and hint, hint, everybody's password in the entire ISE was super secret. In fact, you could hit Alt-W, and everyone had the same password. There was no 2FA. It was just what it was. So I was, running around to the floor in other businesses, getting people on the software. And I think that the lessons, maybe to the options business, but in general, right, I've taken with me are a couple things. One, you have to listen to your customers. You're right. Technology will always bring change, even for people that fought it. And there's a lot of people that fought it for a very long time. And some of them have left the business. Some businesses obviously have come forward with it. But you're not going to stop the progress towards technology. So what is that specific thing? Maybe we'll talk later, and I'll let you know what it is. But yeah, I do think that the being mindful and I think that's sort of where I've sort of gone with my career, right, is being open to new technology and thinking about what is it going to bring and how is it going to change things. And if you're not looking for that, you're going to get left behind. So, is it blockchain tech? Maybe in some ways, but it's not the headline, right, that's going to get you. It's sort of the underlying changes that are coming. And most of these technological changes are more sophisticated as time goes on, right? The ICE Precise Terminal, I'm sure we could all take a computer class and code that up, with a certain amount of experience. But as we go forward, technology becomes more complex. It becomes more specialized. There's few traders anymore in this business. They're all quants, right? They're building algorithms and skills that you and I don't have. But learning how to manage them and listen to them and know what's coming is, I think, the most important thing. And I do think there was a couple of years ago we were talking about GPUs in this space, right? And was going to be the new, is it networks, that are being run by towers? What is coming? But you and I are not going to be the ones that are writing that. It's going to be listening to the people around us and paying attention to them, and building that trust so that they do want to talk to us and tell us and not just be dismissed as another peon in the organization. So.
Thanks for the question. That was good.
How have you prevented regulatory uncertainty from getting in the way of innovating in your various fields?
It's a very good question.
Are there any regulators in here? I'm kidding. I mean,
I don't want to go twice in a row, but so I've worked in crypto at Gemini. I'm working in blockchain now in a really new space because we're technically building digital assets, but they're really spot commodities, which have their own set of rules applied to them. And you spend a lot of money on attorneys, that's for sure. But the problem is you don't really have a roadmap of where to go. I dare say I'm envious of all of you to operate under the SEC because you have a clear regulator, and there is one regulator, and you go to and they tell you yes or no. In our world, we have state regulators, there's federal regulators. Some of our business might fall under the CFTC, some falls in the securities domain. Here's a funny story for you. When I got to Gemini, I worked for Cameron Tyrrell Winklevoss, and we had a lot of conversations about the OCC. And I thought, okay, I know the OCC, this is great, I understand it. It's only when I got there that I realized they were talking about the Office of the Comptroller of Currency and not the OCC that we know. And, we were having these conversations for a couple weeks. And so there's a whole other set of regulators, also very important. But it's a complex web, and you navigate it, and you just really need to sort of be nimble, recognizing that whatever plans you have now, you might have to rewrite in a few months or a few years' time. But right now in blockchain and crypto, there's not a very easy or clear path.
Just if I could real quick, I know we're out of time, but dealing with the uncertainty, that's one of the reasons we bought the Minneapolis Grain Exchange so that we could own a DCM and a DCO. So depending upon whether it was the CFTC taking primary leadership in certain things like crypto derivatives or the SEC having multiple licenses and also in an offshore jurisdiction. The other thing is talking to the regulators. We launched in 2012. You couldn't pick a worse year when you had the problem with the BATS IPO, you had the problem with Facebook, you had the problem with night trading. I went down with our team, our legal team, to the SEC, and I had a chance to speak to them and deal with the uncertainty face to face. There's people here in the audience that were at the SEC when we got launched. And just having the ability to talk to people about the uncertainty and doing what we're going to do, we wouldn't be here. If we did not develop a relationship with our primary regulators, we would never be here. And I won't forget that. And there's tremendous goodwill.
Steve, last word?
Well, actually, dealing with regulators in the U.S. and dealing with regulators in Asia, they all want the same thing, a certain level of transparency. And they want to know what your intentions are. They want to know that you're well-intentioned. And I think we've found, if you follow that practice, generally speaking, they're going to help you.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, I'm thrilled to be up here with everyone. Thank you for your time, and get some sun. It's good.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's MIXLR.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.